Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs of the Club. Once again, brought to you by Snake River Stampede Whiskey. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. We are the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I am your most of the time, sometimes host, Dallas Hammer, joined by most of the time, always here, brave, bold, Brian Marceau.
Dude, good to be here, man. Football's like, 16 days, 17 days away. And we get to do the world famous Tubs of the Club preseason Big Sky Snake Draft. It doesn't get better.
And joining us from Moscow, no, he's not here. Producer redacted Martin Heemstra is on the injured reserve. So we have once again making a triumphant return to Tubs back-to-back weeks because, hey, you're going to see him a whole lot more around here. It's Treeb from the Trib. Treeb, how you doing, man?
Doing good, fellas. Sorry about I came in right at the whistle. You guys didn't see that, but literally right as the intro got playing, Treeb made his appearance. I have the shittiest Wi-Fi known to mankind, also known as my phone's hotspot. So couldn't get the old laptop to work. And right as we started, my cat just took a huge shit. So it stinks like cat shit in here. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about a lot of teams in the Big Sky that are going to be playing like cat shit this season. So excited to get into it, boys.
Is that confirmed? All three of us are cat guys? That's probably not a good sign for this show. I know all about cat shit, and we're going to jump right into the cat shit, boys. This is Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expeditions. We're going to do this show the same way we've been doing it the last couple of years. We're going to snake draft through from 12 to 1 and draft the essentially the poll here of how Tubs at the Club is ranking the schools going into the preseason. So,
with one caveat too. Hey, listeners, live listeners, we got a 18 right now, numbers growing. We're not going to debate the poll position when we talk about a team, but if you guys want to tell us we're idiots or we're right on, whatever, do that in the comments section. That's the place. We'll hit comments as best we can. But like when us three are talking about the teams, we're trying to be informative and give you guys a picture of each Big Sky team. So we're just not going to talk about jockeying. That's for the comment section.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. One last thing, guys. This show sometimes goes way off the rails and goes way too long, so we're going to try our best to keep this condensed. We're going to try to not talk too heavily about the shitty teams. But with that said, Treeb, you've got the honors. Who are you picking as the number 12 team in the 12-team Big Sky Conference?
Well, fellas, I'm looking here at the powerhouse that is the Big Sky Conference. And even though some people may say they are top 5, some say in the nation, some say in the Big Sky, some say in the FCS. But I would say Cal Poly is the worst team in the entire Big Sky. And yeah, guys, I'm a little scrambled here. Just got off of work too. I'm kind of just going through the notes here, and they were picked 12th in the coaches pool, 11th in the media pool, and I'm just all over the place. Out of conference schedule, not very good. Their conference matchups, they're not favored in any of those. Don't like their coach. Don't like what they got returning. Think this is going to be a very, very bad year for Cal Poly. So what do you guys think?
So the issue Cal Poly is going to have to start with is they just, like defensively, they're just garbage. They gave up 43.1 points per game last year. They do have one of the more talented defensive linemen in the league, Elijah Ponder, 8 sacks last year. So hey, that's like all Big Sky level talent, which is actually impressive relative to who his cohorts are with Cal Poly. But look, if you give up 43 points a game, you have to just be freakishly good offensively. That's not who Cal Poly is. The starting quarterback last year, Sam Heward, transferred. It's unclear. There's 2 quarterbacks on the roster with experience. We have Bo Kelly, redshirt sophomore, who started a few games last year. He was definitively not as good as Sam Heward. And then Jaden Jones, he was out pretty much all the last couple of years with knee. He started as a true freshman, blew out his knee. He actually looked like a pretty good guy as a true freshman mobile quarterback, but blew out his knee. So we don't know what they're going to be offensively. They're still spread, but I mean, look, there's just a talent gap, foundational. That's the foundational issue for Cal Poly. Talent gap. They have like 3 winnable games on the schedule in the first place. If things go well, I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I've got no major pushback here, guys. This is, I think a little bit of the bottom teams are going to be interchangeable, but when you look at Cal Poly, look, we all hoped that Bo Baldwin was going to turn that program around. It didn't happen. He left probably for a good reason. Paul Wolf has not turned things around in year 1, year 2. Maybe we're going to see some change here, but realistically, Cal Poly just doesn't have a lot of talent. When you are the bottom dwellers that they are, your conference schedule looks brutal. Just even for the Big Sky, everybody's got a hard schedule, but you've got Sac State, UC Davis, Montana, Idaho, and Weber on that schedule. Like, you're not going to win more than one of those games, even if you pray to every god you can think of. You might be able to pull one of those wins off. They're going to be just another basement dweller. So we've got 12, Cal Poly, pretty easy. Number 11, Brian.
I actually think the number 11 pick it's on the tougher side. I'm going to go. I'm going to be daring, guys. I'm going to go Idaho State at number 12. And here's I know, hey, a shock, but look, the reason Dallas is shocked, hey, the narrative out of Idaho State from last year is, hey, Cody Hawkins revitalized the team, great energy. They picked up 3 wins. Idaho State, they're looking the coaches poll. There were 10th in coaches poll, 8th in media. I think the coaches are closer here. Here's the issue for me. The energy around Idaho State is based off of starting Big Sky play last year, 3-1, with a close loss to Montana and 3 wins against Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado, and Portland State. What I'm going to tell you is this could very easily have been a 1-win team last year. The Eastern Washington absolutely fell apart against Idaho State. Portland State was decimated. If that's the roll of the dice Idaho State had last year, no one has the same type of energy, understanding what that team is right now. And look, defensively, this is not a strong team. Jordan Cook might be the most armed, have the best arm talents in the Big Sky as far as being a strict passer. But look, the team lost some strength at receiver. If they're not stronger on their O-line and they're not significantly better defensively, this is just not a good team. It's a team that can be fun. And when that offense doesn't work out, they sprint to 3 and out, and the defense is on the field for a long time. And I don't think it's a coincidence. This team started out 3-1 and then finished 0-4 in Big Sky play, including decimation we all remember at the Kibbe Dome. Side note, you guys have no reason to know this. I interviewed Cody Hawkins at Media Day, asked him for some impact player names. He did not come up with a single defensive player when he talked to me as far as potential impact. So I'm saying stock on Idaho State should be a little bit lower than it is based off a couple of good bounces in 2023.
Yeah, man, I am not too high on the Bengals either. Like you said, the offense, when it gets clicking, I think, when that team is building off of momentum, I think they have potential to be a solid offensive team. But that is if they have the momentum going. Like you said, they are prone to those 3 and outs, and I think they're a team that is much built for that momentum. And if you said, Cody Hawkins couldn't name an impact player on the defensive side of the ball, that's got to be worrisome for the Bengals, obviously. And like you said, the talk is that the coach injects new life into the team last year. They won 3 games, right? 3 games, which is better than winning 1 game or 2 games, but 3 games, that's still not a good turnaround, right? That's still way significantly below 500. They were 10th in scoring defense last year, 8th in scoring offense, and picked 8th and 10th in the media and coaches poll, respectively. So, not a whole lot of high hopes for the Bengals here. And just looking at their conference schedule, I mean, Montana State, Sac State, and Idaho. I mean, there's no way Idaho State wins any of those games. I'll just call that here. And, they play Cal Poly and Portland State where, coin flip situation there, but, probably on path to win maybe another season where they win 3 games.
Couldn't agree more, guys. I just don't believe in Idaho State this year. Dan Hawkins is no longer with UC Davis and is now assisting Nepo baby just a little bit there. So there's pieces in place here, right? Cody Hawkins is revitalizing the energy around the program. Dan Hawkins is going to be there supporting him, but this is not a quick rebuild that was going to turn around in 1 year or even 2 years. This is just going to be another year, I think, really hard for Idaho State. There might be a chance that they grow into something as the years go, but this just isn't going to be the year. There's not enough pieces here. There's not enough talent here. I think Hawkins has a vision. It's just going to take him a long time to get there. I think if you're an Idaho State fan like McLean listening to this, you just got to be patient. Idaho's been here before when we've seen coaches come in and have essentially to strip it down to the studs and build it back up. That's what you're looking at with this. A couple comments I wanted to hit that we missed. Capdan 58. The issue with Cal Poly is that it is Cal Poly. That's exactly what the problem is with Cal Poly. It's just Cal Poly. It's hard to win there. I mean, they ran the triple option and were able to get some wins here and there, but outside of that, they've just not been good for a very long time. The other comment I wanted to quickly hit, PSU next from Dane Moon. Dane, you are spot on. I am going to go with number 10, Portland State. And honestly, guys, I might have picked Portland State lower if I would have had the chance to. I don't believe in Portland State this year. Not that anybody believes in Portland State any year. That's kind of Bruce Barnum's thing is, hey, let's try to win 5 games and be funny while we do it. This is just this team has been circling the drain for a long time. They played a pretty weak schedule last year and got to 5-6, 4-4 in conference. This year, just no favors on this. They drew the top 5 teams in the Big Sky plus Weber. Out of conference, they have number 5 South Dakota and number 9 Chattanooga. So if you're keeping track here, that means on the preseason rankings, they play 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 18, and 22 this year. That is a brutal schedule for a team that's Idaho good or Montana good. We're talking about top 5 Portland State good. They have one player that made the preseason all-conference team. Dante Sachere is pretty good when he's not throwing. He's fine when he is. Former Vandal CJ Jordan is a backup quarterback there. Maybe he can bring some of X winning culture there, but man, this is just, I don't see anything screaming out to me about Portland State that says they can do anything this year with most of the same roster they had last year with a much tougher schedule. Just, I don't see any path to Portland State even having a winning season, much less picking off more than a couple of games.
Yeah. So I was, Marceau. Geez, I am off the rails today, fellas.
Go right ahead, Tree. Fire away.
Oh my God. I was going to pick top 5 Portland State as my bottom ranked team before I had scrolled down and looked at Cal Poly. That's why I did the whole top 5 build up, and then I didn't. I couldn't agree more with everything that you were saying, Dallas. You kind of hit the nail on the head with everything. Not a whole lot to add. Their schedule is just rough. I mean, you look at that schedule. Not a whole lot of teams are going to come back from that and have a solid record, much less a team like Portland State. So, not very optimistic for their chances.
Brian, you're muted.
For the love of God. Great start. So, name to be familiar with Portland State, running back, in addition to Dante Sachere, running back Quincy Craig. He's a sophomore. He was honorable mention All Big Sky last year and a Jerry Rice Award watch list nominee, despite missing more than half the season. So, in 5 games, rushed 66 times for 410 yards and 3 touchdowns. Keep in mind, Portland State always schedules a couple FBS games in there as well. So, there is some talent. I mean, this is kind of standard with Portland State. They're never the least talented team. I try to let myself be softer on PSU because I've become so fatigued. But like, dude, I re-looked through their schedule. You're 100% right. There's 2 potential wins in that schedule, and they're far apart. One's halfway through the season, Idaho State. One's last game of the season, Northern Colorado. So maybe we should have gone with Portland State earlier, but that's not what this show's for. Look, Dallas, you're right. Portland State, they'll get some transfers out of nowhere plus junior college because that's who they are. This team will for a fact, like at wide receiver, they typically do have some talent. Defensively, they run the flex, which does give teams some fits, but broadly speaking, no, you're right. It feels like it's the same old, and now just murders row schedule at the end.
Yeah, again, Brian, you mentioned the 2 FBS games, Wazoo and BSU. So you're playing 8 preseason ranked FCS schools and 2 FBS schools. Like, again, Montana would struggle with that schedule. Portland State is going to be eviscerated.
All right, Tree, we're ready for your number 9 pick.
Coming in at number 9, fellas. And, I think, well, actually, maybe not. Number 9, I'm gonna go Northern Colorado here. I think it's obvious with the teams left. I think maybe coming up we'll get into some nitty gritty and maybe some separation where some of these teams are getting a little close. But I think Northern Colorado makes the most sense here at the number 9 spot with the teams left. 4 one-score losses last season, which is cool and all, but I feel like, you get any team that either wins one game or not a lot of losses, they're going to be playing in some close games and there'll be some blowouts. So, you got to find some things to be optimistic about, but still no wins last season, is not a great look. But the bright side is they can, there's nowhere else to go but up. They were last in the conference in offense, total offense, 14 points per game. That is really, really bad. That's atrocious. And I think this is a no-brainer for the teams left. I got Northern Colorado at them.
Okay, so the case for Northern Colorado is it can feel shaky, but I brain dead have Northern Colorado on paper higher than Idaho State. Here's why. Trebe hit those close games. Plus, keep in mind, Northern Colorado, the result against Idaho was in doubt until the saddest pick 6 in the history of football took place. So this team was competitive also against some good football teams. It wasn't just the bottom of the conference. It was also against some of the top of the conference. That's while scoring 13 total touchdowns in 8 Big Sky games. There is no possible way to be worse offensively. So, hey, if you're terrible offensively at that level, what would you hope a coaching staff would do? Fire the OC, get a bunch of transfers in. Well, that's what Northern Colorado did. Ed Lamb reunited himself with Justin Walterscheid, who was the OC when Ed Lamb won the Big Sky at Southern Utah. So, hey, box number 1 of what you'd want checked is checked. Now, Northern Colorado did something funny for Media Day. In their ballot of every team submits a ballot of potential guys to vote for. Northern Colorado included 1 total player. It was their punter. The reason why I bring that up, there's a ton of transfers all over this Colorado roster. Look, they have 7 listed quarterbacks on their roster right now. No one from last year who took any snaps at quarterback is coming back. Jacob Sermon graduated. Shea Kuykendall somehow transferred to University of Washington. So it's completely tabula rasa at quarterback. They do have, and defensively, this was not a bad team. They're number 6 defense in the Big Sky. Number 7 scoring defense in the Big Sky, but that's with getting no help from the offense whatsoever. So marginal improvement on offense will obviously potentially turn some of those 1-score games into wins, but it should also help an already relatively strong defense. And David Hogue is back. He was an All-American 2 years ago as a D lineman edge rusher. He missed the last 2 seasons. He's projected to be playing. So honestly, they're kind of strong on the edge. If you remember the 3-3-5 from Northern Colorado gave Idaho fits, which 3-3-5 just did give Idaho fits, but whatever. So I think there's reason to view this team as a team on the rise. Now, not top half of the conference or anything. It's just they were atrocious last year, but there's reason to believe they could at least be a little bit tough some weeks this year.
Yeah, Ed Lamb turned Southern Utah into a Big Sky champ. I know that was a weird season. I know that was almost 10 years ago, but the guy has proven he can win with the non-traditional Big Sky powers. Again, we're talking about I think that these bottom 5 teams here are all just, again, I think anybody would probably pick these as the bottom 5 teams. Northern Colorado being 9th doesn't necessarily mean that they are certainly going to be better than all of the rest of these teams. They're just maybe the least shitty in the shitty bracket. It's very logical to say, yeah, Ed Lamb is going to be able to take one more step forward with the offense because you really can't take a step backward from where they were. Realistically, that will probably reflect on the win-loss column because, again, they didn't win a single game last year. But when you look at their schedule, they do have a pretty rough one. They do have Cal Poly and Portland State. They get NAU, but then you run into Eastern, Weber State, UC Davis, Montana State. Their out of conference is pretty rough. It's going to be an ugly year for Northern Colorado. They just may be able to look at least a little bit more alive than they did last year, which, again, they did play some tight games. Hopefully their record for them will at least reflect a little bit better than 0-11 like it did last year. Brian, that takes us to team number 8.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I have a banner ready from the last Big Sky Conference power rankings I did. I'm going to go Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona, to me, they have a Portland State vibe if Portland State did not have the murderer's row schedule they have. And look, there's a decent amount of unknown with NAU because like head coach, they've got a new head coach, Brian Wright. We, of course, do not know precisely what Brian Wright's going to look like this season. Last year, NAU was middle of the pack in both defense and offense. Number 5 scoring offense, 30 points a game. Number 6 scoring defense, 27 points a game. They went 5-3 in Big Sky play. That should make me feel more as though there's something more compelling about NAU. They were a weirdly solid team that it just never felt like they took off in 2023, even though they were above 500 in Big Sky Conference play. Their best returner defensively is Alex McLaughlin, defensive back. He's one of the top defensive players in the Big Sky. But NAU has won. They're in a first year with a new head coach. That, of course, gives you some unknown. This always feels like a team that if things click, they could be better than the sum of their parts. Maybe that matters now that Chris Ball is gone and Brian Wright is there. And look, Brian Wright has a good pedigree. He was solid at FAU as an interim, solid as the Toledo offensive coordinator, won double-digit games in back-to-back years at D2 Pittsburgh State. So, hey, there's reason to believe. But because it's NAU, until I see it happen, I haven't seen it happen.
Treeb, your thoughts?
Yeah, so going into NAU, I like their schedule, man. I think you look at some of their schedules just going into their conference. I think there is 4 games they can win. I'm not as high, and we'll probably get into them here in a little bit on Eastern Washington, as I think most people are. They got Idaho State, Cal Poly, and Northern Colorado. I think those are 4 games that are winnable there. They got Sacramento State and Weber State, where if NAU can get going under this new head coach, and they are playing well and they're playing on fire. You think about what Idaho was able to do the first year under Jason Eck, and they, can turn this corner and do this thing. Those are 2 winnable games as well. And then you look at it, the 2 real toughest games they have is Idaho and Montana in the conference. So I think they have a pretty favorable conference schedule. And, you hit on the preseason All Big Sky guys. They got 3 of them. If Brian Wright works out, their schedule is fine. And I like NAU. I think they're I'm a little higher on them than I think the average Joe is.
Brian Wright has again not a ton of familiarity to any of us as a head coach because he doesn't have a ton of D1 experience. He was an interim coach at FAU in 2013, I think. It might have been 2016. Sometime again around a decade ago, he was an interim at FAU when Carl Pelini got into all of his fun scandals. It went 4-0 and got them to 6-6. Is honestly one of the best records that an FAU coach has ever had. Left that job a couple years later, went to Toledo, was pretty good as their offensive coordinator, then ended up going to D2 Pittsburgh State, where he won back-to-back 11 and 12 games in the last 2 years. They do return a couple QBs with experience. They did have a pretty solid roster last year. However, there is a ton of turnover this year. This is the one team that's, I think, going to be the most fluctuant. Tree, kind of like you said, the Eck thing. There's a chance he comes in right. That is, and this is a pretty solid upper half team in the Big Sky. There's also a really good chance that they did not nail all of this massive amounts of turnover. Again, most of the receivers are gone. Most of the running backs are gone. They do return 2 quarterbacks with experience, not with a ton. But this is just the most unknown team out there because it's new coach, really a brand new roster at most positions. I think this team is above that bottom 5, but I definitely don't have the confidence to put this team over the following 6 or 7 that we're going to get into. But before we get into that, guys, we do have something we have to discuss. If you are looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been vandal-owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or even the Selway, and you can check out special trips like one to see the Perseid Meteor Shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and guys, like I say every single week, fish the most remote stretches of river in the entire country. Just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. You can call them now at 406-540-4450. Again, that's 406-540-4450. Or check them out at hughesriver.com. Guys, as we go to number 7, this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. I am about to piss off at least one person in the comment section. Number 7, I am going to go with Eastern Washington. Eastern, man, struggled last year, 4-7, 3-5 in conference. Really fell apart a handful of different times. They did have some great wins. They beat ranked SELA, at the time ranked SELA. They beat UC Davis. They beat Weber State, but then they also lost to ISU, NAU, Portland State. They came in 6th and 8th in the coaches and media preseason polls. They have one single preseason all-conference player, receiver, Efton Chisholm III. They do have a new defensive coordinator, Eric Sanders, and I'm sure that we have Patty Frakes with a whole bunch of details that he will be dropping in the comment section shortly. But for me, guys, I don't have the confidence in Eastern to be able to come out and say, hey, they're going to finally turn it around. Aaron Best has got this program back to the top of the Big Sky. They never have a problem scoring. They are loaded offensively. Keikoa Vesperas is a fantastic quarterback. Their top running back, Tuna Altair, is back. They bring back a bunch of receivers. They always have great offense. But their schedule doesn't do them any favors once again. They have Montana, UC Davis, Montana State all at home, and then Idaho and Sac State away. So the top 5 teams in the Big Sky, they pulled all of them. Yes, you get the Idaho State, NAU, NOCO games, but again, we're talking about that middle of the pack here and teams trying to separate themselves out. I just don't see it for Eastern this year. It's just not something that we are used to seeing. Eastern with a competent defense. Patty says in the comment section, Sanders has been a night and day difference at practice. Will that translate into games? We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that, sorry.
You
fucking up the beats, dude. Fucking A, dude. Trebe is on full-on amateur hour, folks, and I am sorry. Once we fucking figure this shit out, Trebe is going to be knocking out fucking grand slams, I promise.
Just go, dude.
But
just go.
Eastern Washington, fucking loaded offensively. Fucking like them there, dude. I promise you. Like that offense that Eastern Washington's got. But I had them and NAU like right there, neck and neck. And but the reason that I had NAU personally above Eastern Washington is because of what you said, Dallas. I just liked NAU's schedule a little bit more. And it's going to be a tough road, tough sledding for Eastern Washington. And we can see how they're going to deal with that schedule here in the future.
So what I want to look at for Eastern Washington, Dallas, you hit the offensive points. This is year in and year out, the team can score. That's how, and it doesn't matter who transfers in, who transfers out. It doesn't matter what rotating coaching staff they have. Eastern puts points on the board. Kekoa Visperas is probably the best returning passer in the Big Sky if we're talking strictly as a passer. The issue that is going to matter for Eastern, you guys already hit the schedule part, but this is a team that in 2023, their rushing defense was worse than Cal Poly's. The Eastern gave up 241.6 rushing yards per game in the Big Sky, 6 yards per carry, surrendered 25 rushing touchdowns, which is to say, look, we saw this in Idaho, and you saw this the entire season. Eastern could stop no team on the ground. The Big Sky overall is most of the good teams, the stronger teams in the Big Sky, which is mirroring a lot of the FCS, is they can run the ball pretty damn well, and the passing is complementary. If a new coaching staff isn't able to turn that around in a meaningful way, meaning they go from like worst rushing defense to like middle-ish of the pack, which would be a monumental leap for Eastern to make this year, then they're not going to be, this is, again, Eastern will be on the outside of the playoff picture. They'll likely be on the outside of 500 in the Big Sky. And based off of the fact that the transfer portal era, every team has talent leave and come in. I know of no reason to believe that there's been an extreme influx of talent that's going to make Eastern this force on the ground. So if you're making the case for Eastern, then what you're saying is by changing over defensive coordinators and bringing in Eric Sanders, who, hey, he does have some background in places, most recently in interior linebackers coach at Stanford. However, Stanford not exactly lighting the football world on fire. You have to have a lot of faith in Sanders as a guy who's going to completely turn things around. I'm going to say when I see that, I'll believe it. But we've seen a few years of the talented Eastern just not looking top half of the Big Sky, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. That's their issue. If you're as monumentally bad on the ground defensively as Cal Poly is, which Eastern was, that is a huge cliff to have to scale.
Yeah, Brian, that's the big thing for me. I want to shout out Tom Kendall in the comment section. Offense too good to put this low. IMHO. I would agree with that, Tom. The problem is that defense was just so bad. Patty in the comment section. Personnel defensively won't be much different overall. The hope is the flashes Eastern's defense showed last year, like in the Weber and Fresno State games, just shows up more often. That's what you're hoping for, as Brian just kind of detailed for us. The offense is going to be fine. It's how many games are they going to lose 49-45? That's the issue. There's not going to be a problem scoring points. The problem is going to be that defense. But we should also point out, we are now, so we got through, again, NAU, NOCO, PSU, ISU, Cal Poly. That bottom five is a pretty solid bottom five. NAU, yeah, they could be frisky, but then you get to the remaining 7 teams, like Eastern Washington received votes in the top 25. Did they make the top 25? No, but they received votes. Like, we are now talking about all of the schools that are considered in the upper echelon or the fringe playoff of the Big Sky. So, and the
7th equates to around 500 ball in Big Sky play.
Exactly. So this is not us saying Eastern's going to be terrible. This is just saying, hey, that defensively they've got to make a lot of strides to really get back to what Bo Baldwin had them at the end of his tenure and Aaron Best at the beginning of his. That leads us to number 6, Treeb.
At number 6, I'm going to put Weber State. I think Weber State has one of the better defenses in the Big Sky Conference. I think they lack, the fireworks and the firepower offensively. I think the Big Sky, for the most part, is kind of more of a defensive conference. I think there's a lot of solid defenses in this conference, and Weber State has one of the top units, but, they're going to need to score some points. Last year they went 6-5 while being the 10th scoring offense in the Big Sky. So, I'd like to see more out of that offense. They do bring a good chunk of that offense back, but would like to see more. Do like their defense, but again, I think their offense just kind of lacks the firepower for me.
So Weber State last year, part of why they struggled early was having just no quarterback whatsoever. Had Kylan Weiser was the guy's name, was not a put down on the dude. He was just objectively the least talented Big Sky quarterback. And Weber could not keep their defense off the field. That was their issue. A little more midway through the season, they switched to true freshman Richie Munoz. And from then on, Weber pretty much looked like a fringe playoff team, finished 4-4 in the Big Sky. But hey, they started by digging themselves a hole with under Munoz. Like, they're not scoring 40 points a game, but their offense was more than competent. And look, hey, we saw Weber State beat Idaho. So what we saw there, and yeah, sure, you want to relitigate that and say McCoy was hurt. Well, like, they still got to him, which is say Weber, they're strong. They're still going to be strong defensively. Former Vandal Kamari Bailey joins Weber State on the edges. If you guys remember Kamari Bailey in the Big Sky, he was an impact player. And Weber State, look, the observations I've been given from Weber State Weekly contributor Dustin Chapman is the depth in the front seven looks like it's completely back for Weber. They look like they have a ton of speed in there up front, which is to say it's looking a little bit more like the ferocious defense we expected last few seasons. But Richie Munoz is, look, we saw him. He was easily a good enough Big Sky quarterback to help move the ball, solid passer, very low center of gravity, so looks weird running, but he's weirdly effective running the ball. And Damon Bankson, running back, he missed more than half the season last year, season-ending injury. He's back and healthy, and provided he's at 100%, which we saw that early in the season last year, Damon Bankson's a top 3 or 4 running back in the Big Sky. So this Weber State, to me, is a team that absolutely can make noise as fringe playoff, which that's what we're talking about, number 6 in Big Sky, as a team that's looking at first-round playoff matchup. That's what I see out of Weber State. And what we're in year 3, Dallas, is it year 3 or year 2 of Mickey Mental? Year 2 of Mickey Mental. What we saw in the second half of Mickey Mental's tenure last season was offensively, they were more inventive. They were more aggressive with a competent passing quarterback. They got that the whole year. This is a team that can make at least some noise in Big Sky play.
And the schedule makers did Weber State the biggest favor of all this year. We're going to get to Sacramento State here shortly. And I think there's a lot of folks that are in the chat right now that don't believe in Sacramento State. And you know, we're going to get to that. Sacramento State is the 3rd hardest game in conference for Weber State. They have Montana and Idaho. Then they have Sac State. And then they hit Portland State, Idaho State, Cal Poly, Northern Arizona, and Northern Colorado. This is a much easier schedule for them this year. They have, again, probably the easiest schedule in the conference. Again, if you've been listening to us, Portland State, Idaho State, Cal Poly, Northern Colorado, that's a pretty mean bottom 4 there. Realistically, if you're Weber, you've already got those 5 games circled as we should win each and every one of these games. 5 wins in conference. And then, hey, you've got Sac State. You expect to be competitive. Montana and Idaho, you're probably thinking you're going to be competitive. Your path to the playoffs is much, much greater this year simply because of the schedule they play.
Can I add one thing to Dallas? Their out-of-conference schedule, they play 3 garbage FCS teams, Lamar, Northwestern State, and McNeese. So based off what you're talking about, that's potentially 8 garbage wins. Honestly, if Weber picks up 1 win of those other 4 games, they're in consideration for a first-round bye. So Duffers Tavern saying, I dislike Weber a lot. A few years ago, Weber player flipped off the crowd, and I told him to watch the game. Weber then ran a fake field goal for TD, and I got flipped off again. Little stupid Weber. Okay, well, hey, thank you, Duffers Tavern. That's like this. We need sources, so thank you. But with that schedule and with the second half of Weber State season, the way I think that's the Weber State team you should be paying attention to. It finished 6-5, but offensively we're much stronger to close out the year. I'd kill for that schedule, dude.
I would too. Brian, that takes you to top 5. What are you going to pick?
I want to annoy some of our listeners more. And I'm going to accidentally make us higher on Sac State than we need to be by going. Nope, I take it back. Solid schedule. Sacramento State's number 5. Go with Sacramento State at number 5. Really glad I spent that extra couple seconds looking at Sacramento State. So, hey, the case for Sacramento State is this is a team that has some talent. I was at Media Day, and I know it appeared there's question about quarterback. They sent Caden Bennett as a representative at Media Day. Caden Bennett was back as the starter towards the end of last season. My understanding is the reason Bennett sat wasn't like weird locker room issues, which is what it seemed like with how Sacramento State was a bit mercurial last season. My understanding is it was actually health. So with Caden Bennett back, he's a dynamic quarterback, good enough passer, one of the faster guys on his legs. So there's some talent offensively. For the last couple seasons, Sacramento State has returned one of the better offensive lines in the Big Sky. They do have they also have preseason All Big Sky wide receiver Jared Gibson and tight end Coleman Kuntz. So there are some pass catchers. They have a relatively speaking easier Big Sky conference schedule, as in like, hey, they've got Portland State, NAU, Cal Poly, and Idaho State. They also dodge Idaho, but they get to dodge Idaho and Montana with only, out of the preseason top 3 of Montana State, Sac State only plays one of them. Your question for Sac State is going to continue to be under first-year coach last year, Andy Thompson. You saw like, hey, still a relatively strong defensive team. They clearly took a step back offensively with head coach and offensive coordinator Troy Taylor gone. So that level of offense probably not coming back. So your question is there an extra step defensively that Sacramento State can make? Because if you're top 5 in the Big Sky, again, that's a playoff level team. Sacramento State coasted quite a bit off their FBS win over Stanford last season. Honestly, I felt it would have been Sac State probably shouldn't have made the playoffs. But hey, they won a game. So, and there is some returning talent. But the fringe playoff seems right to me, Dallas. I think they should be a little bit lower than preseason national ratings. But within the Big Sky, we're talking about a team that has they have a decent amount of boxes checked talent-wise. And then they have enough boxes unchecked to say, if this team barely misses the playoffs, I'm not shocked. But if they make the first round, I'm not shocked either.
Yeah, that's exactly the mindset I have about this team going in. Their Big Sky schedule is easier this year than it was last year. Their offensive line should still be pretty talented. Again, they have Caden Bennett back. They have, I forget the name of the true freshman that played the last 4 games of the regular season last year, and they kept his red shirt. So they have 2 quarterbacks with previous experience. But man, as they get farther and farther away from Troy Taylor, their defense was not particularly good last year. Andy Thompson is a defensive guy. I question how much longer we're going to see Sac State hanging around this top before they fade into irrelevance like they most likely will at some point. Captain 58 saying the Causeway Classic is going to be huge for playoff implications this year. Davis won last year and should have made the playoffs. Again, that being the final game of the season is always it always has some sort of implication. At least it has in the last 6-7 years. But Trebe, I did not give you a chance to speak about Sac State.
Yeah, not too much to add here, fellas. I will say, after just hearing you two talk about Sac State, I do think I may have underestimated Weber just a little bit. I think just if I could take that back, I think I would swap Weber State and Sac State maybe positions. I think Weber State maybe just a little bit ahead of Sac State. Just after listening to some more talking heads talk about it. That's what friends are for, to kind of go over some things and maybe talk you out of some things.
See, that's the beauty of the snake draft here, guys, because it becomes chaos, and none of us would have selected it exactly this way, but it causes us to have these discussions, because team number 4 to me is absolutely obvious of the 4 teams that are remaining. I wouldn't have put them at 4. I think I would have put them behind Sac State and and Weber State. But again, it's the beauty of the snake draft, boys. So we're going to go number 4, UC Davis. UC Davis 7-4 last year in what was Dan Hawkins' final year. He is now retired. Former offensive coordinator Tim Plow. That's not Mr. Plow. That's Tim Plow. Tim Plow in at head coach. They were picked 4th in the media, 4th in the conference. So again, I mean, we are at least matching up with that. Lan Larison is the Big Sky offensive MVP of the preseason. He's a preseason All-American. He is probably the best player in the conference. If they're going to succeed, it's going to go through him because he, again, is probably the best player in this conference. If their defense holds up and continues to be successful, I mean, with that run game and with that defense, there's a very good chance that them having a good year. Ron Lowney in the comment section, Larison 8 games, 1,400 yards. Truly, honestly, baffling numbers from an FCS running back. Shocked that he's still here. Honestly, crazy. Good for him for sticking around. Feels like he probably could have bounced out elsewhere. But you look at their conference schedule, they do have 3 fairly easy games, Portland State, Cal Poly, and NoCo. Then you get Eastern and Sacramento State before they do have the trifecta of Montana, Montana State, Idaho. So their schedule just kind of all over the place. And again, we're probably going to see UC Davis, Sac State at the end of the year. The Causeway Classic is probably going to have some sort of playoff implication around it.
Yeah, new coach, but I think they have a lot of talent. I mean, Lan Larison, Rex Connor, Zach Kennedy, like all 3 of those guys are building blocks for a football team. I mean, those are 3 great players to have. And, with them playing the Portland States, Cal Poly's, Northern Colorado's, they're going to win those games. And they're talented enough to, beat the Sacramento States, the Eastern Washington. And if they can just, kind of build just off talent alone and, maybe some unsung heroes that we don't know about from UC Davis kind of rise to the occasion, there could be a situation where they sneak out a win here against Montana, Montana State, Idaho. I mean, Idaho's, as this is an Idaho podcast, Idaho's probably prone to lose, one of those games to, a mid to, lower tier Big Sky team. That's just what happens to Idaho. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. I'm pretty high on UC Davis. I think I would have had them at 4 regardless. And I like their chances this year. I really do.
Davis has low-key been pretty damn good on the defensive side of the ball. The number 1 Big Sky rushing defense last season, number 3 total defense last season. What I want to point to is one day we just don't know how things are going to be with Tim Plow. Tim Plow is a well-respected FCS offensive coordinator, has been Big Sky World for a long time, including stints at NAU and UC Davis now twice. But as a head coach here, had a hot minute at Boise State under Andy Avalos, where word is Avalos let Plow do essentially nothing, and that is why Andy Avalos is gone. Part of why Avalos is gone. Hashtag who do we hate? Offensively thing I want to talk about, because UC Davis, we know they're going to be good, but the last handful of years, they've been at that fringe playoff level, maybe shouldn't have been left out of the playoffs, but they've felt talent-wise essentially the same. They took quarterback Miles Hastings. This was his 4th year, either as a starter or taking significant snaps. And he regressed in a pretty significant way from his sophomore year to his junior year, where he went from throwing 20 touchdowns and 6 picks, 70% completion percentage, to 14 touchdowns, 10 picks, and 63% completion percentage. And generally speaking, at the start of last season, he was understood as probably the best returning passing quarterback in the Big Sky. Just didn't look like the same guy at all in 2023. And if he isn't able to find at least some sort of middle ground between 2023 and 2022 this season, I think that's a significant handicap on UC Davis, because you already have the fact that we're going to have no put down to Tim Plow. Dan Hawkins is a very good coach that a ton of schools, if they were to sign him today, you would consider them having significantly upgraded as a head coach. We just don't know what that looks like when the OC, the longtime OC, takes over as head coach. I mean, we just talked about Sacramento State as a version of that with their defensive coordinator. So I guess the inverse version at UC Davis is, hey, can the longtime OC, can they maintain that strength defensively while taking at least some sort of step forward on the offensive side of the ball? The favor that UC Davis has to me is, in particular, another team with an out-of-conference schedule I would kill for Idaho to have. Texas A&M Commerce, garbage. Southern Utah, garbage. Utah Tech, Least garbage of those three. And then, hey, they have Cal, but three FCS games that should be pretty easily winnable. And then they also do have Portland State, Cal Poly, and Northern Colorado. Just by virtue of winning those garbage games, this is a team that's already at the point of French playoffs. So if they can pick up any of their okay wins, that's how you get to a number 4 level. But look, we're not to talk jockeying. I think this tier of Weber State and Sacramento State and UC Davis it's clearly something different than the next 3.
Yeah, before we get into the big 3, I'm feeling parched, Brian, and I don't know what to do about it.
What you should do is head to your local liquor store in the state of Idaho. You live in Spokane, so don't spend 1 second. It's worth. You'll save the money and gas on the drive you get to Coeur d'Alene with what you save. It's worth it. Go to Idaho State Liquor Store, grab Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey. Look, they've got two varieties. You can't go wrong with either. Your entry level Snake River Stampede, 3-grain whiskey. We're talking corn, rye, and malted barley, double barrel finish bourbon, and then Oloroso sherry casks. One of the best buys in Idaho State liquor stores at the entry level you can find. You want to class it up a little. The 1915 small batch, it's still that same 3-grain combination, which that's what sets this Canadian whiskey apart from virtually anything else in the state of Idaho. Those 3 grains mean radically different flavor. The 1915 small batch, aged an additional 2 years, its double barrel finish is ex-bourbon, ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. You can't go wrong either way. Grab yourself a bottle. I always have at least 2.
You know, we're not going to make a joke about it. Thank you, SRS, for coming back. We love you guys. We love your whiskey. And guys, we're now here at the final 3. And for any of the disagreements we may have about how this list has gone and the comment section saying, hey, this is too low, this is too high. At the end of the day, I think there's a clear top 3 teams in the Big Sky. It's the 3 teams that realistically, it just feels right that they're here. So, Treeb, we're going to let you rip the Band-Aid off and tell us which of the 3 big 3 is number 3.
Coming in at number 3, I have Idaho. It's got to be Idaho. I thought when they were announced as the number 3 and the coaches in the media poll, I thought that was perfect. I thought that's where they should be. After going over these rankings here and going over the other teams, I feel more optimistic about Idaho's schedule. The only thing is you look at this Montana State, UC Davis, Weber State, those top 3 matchups, all 3 of them have very solid defenses, right? And if Idaho can't get their offense humming, right, or if they can't really, put their foot on the gas and find their offensive identity, but I think they will with Jason Eck, Luke Schleisner. They've been doing it since they've been there. Then they're going to be in trouble. Right, so they are going to play 3 really solid defenses. They play Eastern Washington, NAU, and those are games they should win. And obviously, the 3 bottom teams: Cal Poly, Portland State, Idaho State. This is a team that has a defense that is going to be one of the best in the FCS, I believe. Randy Isbell, our Lewiston Tribune beat reporter, has been coming back from practice and has been blown away by how this defense has been playing. Phenomenal from the 1s to the 2s. They have been absolutely dominating the offense so far. And while that is, great for the defense, it's also kind of a little shaky for the offense because we don't know how that offense is going to look come the season. But, Jack Lane, I think, is the prototypical quarterback for that Idaho offense. And Jason Eck has been able to get this team rolling since he's come into town. So I think they'll find a way. But for now, I think it's safe to put them at number 3.
So look, the case for Idaho, Treeb mostly just made it. Very strong defense returning. By the way, some more depth we just haven't talked about on the show. Malachi Williams last year started on the edge. He's a depth piece, but he's back fully healthy. I mean, that's the kind of talent we're talking about on the front 7. The case for offensively is, hey, it's a factory reset, but lots of people, we've seen this year in year out in college football, you lose a wide receiver or you lose a really good running back. Fan bases are scared. Other teams fan bases assume, hey, you're going to take a step back. But year in, year out, good producing wide receivers and running backs are replaced, because you just need about 80% of what the guy before you did, and then you have a couple other depth pieces that makes up for it. So that's the base case for Idaho. And Jack Lane looked good. Well, he's only seen extended run against bad teams, but Jack Lane has only looked good as an Idaho quarterback. That's case 4. The case against which Trevin already also basically hit on is if you're not deep into Idaho football, like you're a Montana fan tuning in, Montana State fan like Ron Lowney turning in, you're thinking, who in God's name? Look, Idaho was the most kind of star-reliant offense of the top Big Sky teams last year, really relying heavily on Giovanni McCoy, Hayden Hatton, and Anthony Woods. And then when the back half of the season, as we have belabored on this show, Idaho is actually not that strong offensively, and they lost all those big names. So huge question marks offensively for Idaho if you're not deep into Vandal lore the way we are. But look, we know the answers. As we'll talk about more in depth next week when we really go into Idaho. But Eli Cummins is back. We know he can produce. Nate Thomas is healthy. We know he's already produced at the FCS level. Reason to believe Day Buchanan's going to make a 3-headed monster running back where depth is an asset for Idaho, which it was not last season. It was Anthony Woods, and that was it. We know that the key to this team offensively truly is what type of offensive line growth will we see. Early returns are depth is better, but it's not up to the level that Jason Eck wants it to be. Our source, Jason Eck, on the show last week. But even with those question marks, no one understands Idaho as a bad team. Everyone understands this is a good team, where underperformance for Idaho is you don't get a first-round playoff bye. That's the level, that's the standard Idaho set for the last 2 seasons. I call that fair. Plus, like Abraham Williams and special teams is any school in the nation would have taken that get.
Yeah, I hate to have to be the guy playing the devil's advocate here. The one issue you have with Idaho, as we've talked about, this is a basically reset button for the offense. The offensive line is obviously going to be a lot of the same guys, but that was the weak point last year. You're counting on a bunch of these guys to take steps forward. You're counting on some of those depth pieces to improve to being depth that isn't a catastrophic drop off. Yeah, we might see a couple guys. Caden Robnett was a guy that Eck has mentioned. Maybe he takes a starter's spot over a guy like Leighton Vining, who ends up then being a depth piece. Like, you're going to see the line have more depth and more longevity over the year. But again, we're talking Jack Lane. Yes, we are all very high on Jack Lane. I mean, I got roasted for it a couple of years ago when I said Jack Lane should have played the Sela game because Giovanni was hurt. We're all really high on Jack Lane. He has played 2 games. We are high on what Jason Eck is going to do with this offense. We're replacing virtually all the pass catchers. Jordan Dwyer is easily the number 1. Mark Hamper is probably the number 2 without a ton of playing time. Whole bunch of depth behind them that is either Michael Graves, talented but not super healthy, or guys that just haven't seen the field. Again, 3-headed running back is great, but it's also not Anthony Woods. Maybe you can replace that production by committee. That's the hope. The tight end room is a giant question mark. All of these things to say, you look at Idaho's defense and what they did, they're going to continue being solid, even with the departures that they had. If the offensive line takes even a slight step forward and Jack Lane shows what he has shown again against terrible ISU, this should be a top 10 team in the country that's looking for, one of those traditional top 8 buys. Is it going to happen? Certainly not guaranteed. Is there a chance that things fall apart? Yes. But realistically, guys, I think we have finally rounded the corner of Idaho is just going to be a damn good team year in and year out. So, with tree picking Idaho 3, Brian, who is our silver medalist?
Honestly, it's a team that I probably would have gone with the bronze, but that's not the point of the show. Montana State. So Montana State, know for a fact they're going to be solid. With the Bobcats last year, went 8-4 overall, 6-2 in conference. were the beneficiaries of a pretty rough playoff matchup against North Dakota State. And honestly, the Montana State versus North Dakota State last year has become Exhibit A in why the field is going to expand to 16 seeded teams to attempt to avoid having 2 of the top 6 teams play in round 2. But Montana State, look, they looked a little bit lost after losing to Idaho relative to being Montana State last year. And this season, they returned a lot of starters, 9 on the offensive side, 7 on the defensive side. But they lost some big names transferring out into the FBS world, both the University of Washington and some to Nevada to reunite with Jeff Choate, who's taken over for the Wolfpack. The big question I have for Montana State offensively is Tommy Mellott, who he's preseason All Big Sky, well-respected dude. He's a very good player. But the question is, can he stay healthy? Brent Vegan loves to have his quarterbacks run, just like Jeff Choate did before. And last season, Tommy Mellott struggled health-wise, but that was also with Sean Chambers coming in and running power essentially every damn play. And that was running quarterback power for Montana State is one of the most effective things that team can do. Well, there is no known depth like Sean Chambers yet at Montana State. So, yes, they have the O-line that we would kill for. They might have the best offensive lineman in the entire nation, Marcus Ware, first-team All-American, Walter Payton watch list as an O-lineman. But I do think that Brent Vegan's going to have a little bit of identity stuff to figure out because Montana State loves to run the quarterback, so you have that extra blocker. But Mellott has not been able to stay healthy for the last couple of years, again, with Sean Chambers coming in and taking a lot of the hits. So are we going to see the same Montana State team we've seen the last few years where, hey, roll with it and trust the O-line to do what they can do? Or are we going to see a team that tries to run, honestly, again, one of the most effective plays in Montana State's arsenal, less, so that you can have a little bit more standard RPO, rolling out to laterally with Tommy Mellott, where he can be very good. But we know Tommy Mellott, look, he's been efficient as a passer, but he's not a guy that Montana State wants to rely on his arms to win games. We actually saw that in the Kibbe Dome when you can turn Montana State into relying on Tommy Mellott to win you games with his arm instead of help win games with his arm. They're a very different team. And I think that the better teams defensively they might have a little bit better time trying to turn Montana State into a team where Tommy Mellott has to show the developmental step he's made, or Brent Vegan has to say, okay, we're going to risk health of a guy who's had injury problems for the last few years.
Yeah, I think that's the story of this team. Is Tommy Mellott going to be able to take a step forward in the passing offense, and is he going to stay healthy? I think if the answer to one of those is yes, Montana State's got a pretty high ceiling. If somehow the answer to both of those is yes, you're talking about a team that could win a national championship. And again, that's what you would expect from the team that was picked number 4 in the preseason poll nationally, and then second in the Big Sky polls. The other thing, Brian, to hit on as a case against them, the schedule is not great for them. But again, when you're in the Big Sky, there's not really such a thing as a good schedule. I know Weber State worked out, but most schools, they're going to have a pretty hard schedule. Montana State did get lucky with Idaho, Sac State, and Montana all at home. They do go on the road to UC Davis and Eastern, so you do have 5 of the tougher schools. So going undefeated in conference, probably not going to happen. Going 6-2, that's probably kind of your target here. But man, it just doesn't feel like, unless they figure out something at the quarterback position to stay a little bit healthier, it feels like we're going to run into the same thing that Montana State typically has done. They are physical enough to bully around just about every team in the country, but then you get to the playoff time and other teams with a little bit better quarterback play and a little bit healthier quarterback play are the ones that are able to get it done in the end.
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail on the head pretty much with this Montana State team. But, this is a good team. This is a team that's good year in and year out. And we're just going to have to wait when the season comes to the end to see what this Montana State is going to be able to do. Jesus.
Yeah, the one positive I will give to Montana State, as we talked a lot about the case against, the case for, And that offensive line is going to keep them in just about every single game. Same with the defensive line. Like, they're not going to get blown out frequently, if at all. And turnover luck really screwed them last year. They forced 7 fumbles and only recovered 2 of them. They did not have a great turnover margin. They didn't turn the ball over a ton, but again, when you're forcing turnovers, but you're not actually getting them, that luck does tend to change from year to year. You can see their turnover differential just bumping up ever so slightly, and that will propel them to be more like the teams we saw in 2022 and 2021, rather than last year's unfortunate exit after a missed extra point in the playoff game. That circles us around to Martin's favorite school, coming in at number 1, the Montana Grizzlies. 13-2 last year, 7-1 in conference with a loss to NAU of all teams. Lost to SDSU in the championship game. They got creamed 23-3. They have the top scoring defense in the Big Sky. They averaged 14.5 points a game. They're the number 6 offense in the Big Sky, averaging 30 points a game. They bring back so much talent. I talked a little bit ago about Lan Larison and my belief that he is the best player in this conference. You certainly are not wrong if you think Junior Bergen is the number 1 player in this conference. He's on the Walter Payton watch list. He's first teamer all Big Sky. He's probably first team All-American. I didn't double check that. He's a receiver, punt returner. He's honestly, I think they kind of just say AP because he kind of does a little bit of everything. Eli Gilman was very good last year, won the Jerry Rice Award. They have, again, a pretty solid offensive line. Their defense is always outstanding under Bobby Hauck. Again, guys, we're talking about a team that lost in the national championship game last year. So I'm going to hit the negative sides of this first. And Bobby Hauck's biggest problem, especially since he came back, is that he has not been able to develop quarterbacks. The quarterback room has just been a revolving door for them over and over and over. Clifton McDowell came out of essentially nowhere last year to be, again, the best quarterback they've had in quite a long time, and did enough offensively to propel them to that national championship game. Do they have that in them again? They brought in Logan Fife, a transfer from Fresno State. He started 6 games over the last 3 seasons. They also have a freshman, Kiali Ayat. That's probably going to be the guy long-term. But again, is this going to be just another one of these Bobby Hauck teams that wants to win 14-7? If it is, that's probably not a team that's going to go to the national championship game. If he's figured out the quarterback spot for the first time realistically since he returned to Montana, then yeah, I mean, we're talking about a school that absolutely has national championship aspirations this year, as much as I hate to say it.
100%. And the Junior Bergen, Eli Gilman combination there, I mean, you got Montana State, Weber, and Davis. No Idaho on the schedule, no Little Brown Stein for the Vandals in Montana to play for this year. That's upsetting. But yeah, I think until somebody proves that they're not number 1 after going to the national championship game, they're going to be the number 1 team in the nation, or in the Big Sky, excuse me. And I think that's just fair. That's where they should be, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, so to me the case for Montana starts with the fact that last season when Montana started out slow, there was a ton of noise even in the Montana fan base about firing Bobby Hauck. Why? Mm-hmm. Because Bobby Hauck chose to not sign an extension in the summer of 2023. That was a self-inflicted gunshot wound of a sort, which obviously the team recovered from the start, but there will be no noise. Bobby Hauck signed an extension. And after making it to the title game last year, he'll be able to stay at Montana as long as he wants. By the end of the season, he's going to be, I believe, going to hold the record for most Big Sky Conference wins as a coach. He's going to take away from Jerome Sowers. Sowers doesn't have it for the same reason Hauck is going to get it. Hauck's going to have it for being only good in 12 seasons over 2 stints at Montana. The quarterback question, Captain 58 said, hey, we're picking them number 1 and we don't know who their starter is. Now, you're right, Dallas, about the issue with Hauck not developing quarterbacks. The pushback is because he hasn't developed quarterbacks, a question at quarterback has pretty much been a constant for Hauck his entire career. and he still has made FCS title games, I believe, 4 times. Hasn't won any, but has made it 4 separate times. They also picked up, like Tom Kendall said, Scott Linehan as an offensive analyst. Certainly won't hurt at the FCS level. Like Dallas, I see that. I'm talking about the FCS level. Analysts don't move the needle that much, really. And if you got a pro, what's that going to hurt you? Second, they have some other talent, very high-end talent we have not referenced. They probably have the best cornerback in the Big Sky, Trevin Gradney, picked off 5 passes last year. They have Cole Grossman coming back. He missed all of last season. Cole Grossman, his first 2 seasons, was a freshman Hero Sports All-American and then a sophomore Hero Sports All-American. That's a very good player. They made a title without. He's a good blocker. He's a strong pass catcher. Riley Wilson also, picked up 8.5 sacks last season. So there's a lot of talent back in Montana. And I don't think you should be worried necessarily about the names or the quarterback for a fact, because last season they started out with 2 quarterbacks. It took them a while to get the thing figured out. And Bobby Hauck's been open in interviews. Last year, it was a contrast between what Sam Vidlak and Clifton McDowell did. They did differing things. Kealili Ayat and God damn it, drawing a blank on the Fresno State transfer, Dallas.
Logan Fife.
Hauck has described them as like, hey, they're essentially the same style player. So whatever offense we do, it's the same with both those guys. The case against Montana would now be one, obviously they're going to be good, but why would they not win the Big Sky? Could be, hey, you think it was a little bit of a flash in the pan that having a running quarterback worked with what Bobby Hauck will allow his coaching staff to do. I mean, Brent Peace was an objective step up from what Montana had done previously, but it's not like Montana lit the world on fire offensively last season. Hey, they were as a scoring offense number 6 in the Big Sky at 30, and they put it together at the end. But that's not to say that even in a good season, the offense was working miracles. And this leads to the other point. Alex Gubner on defensive line last year was an absolute FCS monster. He was the engine that made the defense go. He completely annihilated defensive lines, emotionally set the tone for that Montana team. Gubner being gone may not be just, hey, put in another guy and you get 80% of his production. So Montana has the talent, but they were one of the best defenses in the nation, which Bobby Hauck often has. But replacing Gubner, that is a reasonable question. If I'm a Montana fan, I'm way more concerned about how we replace Alex Gubner than what we're going to do with a new quarterback, which happens every year anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that, Brian. Again, with Gubner, that's a big gaping hole. They don't have if you're looking at negatives for Montana, they don't have the ability like they did last year. Oh man, we lost Robbie Hauck. Oh, hey, wait, we actually got a whole lot better because he's not on the field anymore. That's not going to be the case with Gubner. There's no replacing that guy. So again, we're grasping at straws here for things that are going to be like weaknesses. Oh, the quarterback's going to be a weakness. Well, it's been their weakness as long as Hauck's been there. Hasn't really mattered a whole lot so far. Yeah, they've lost one of the best FCS defenders to come through here in the last 20 years. Realistically, they are probably going to have some other guy show up, and Riley Wilson's going to end up being the Buck Buchanan Award winner, and it's going to be, oh, well, I guess it didn't matter. They filled in another position. As much as I hate to say it, Montana is they're Montana. They have been good for a very long time. They're going to continue to be good. When Bobby Hauck is gone, they're probably going to replace him with somebody that's just going to keep this train rolling. There is going to be some ebbs and flows, but realistically, they're the cream of the crop in the FCS for a reason. As much as I hate to say it, it makes sense that we have them number 1 this year because, again, they're number 3 in the polls right now. Gentlemen, we are an hour and 15 minutes into this show. We have gone through our list of schools. I'm going to quickly read them off here. Number 12, Cal Poly. Number 11, Idaho State. Number 10, top 10, Portland State. Number 9, Northern Colorado. Number 8, Northern Arizona. Number 7, Eastern Washington. Number 6, Weber State. Number 5, Sacramento State. Number 4, UC Davis. Number 3, Idaho. Number 2, Montana State. Number 1, Montana. Trebe, any final thoughts on our rankings?
No final thoughts. Thought we knocked this motherfucker out of the park, boys.
So in light of that, patreon.com/Tubs the Club, guys. It costs as little as a cup of coffee to support the show each month. However, you want to give more than a cup of coffee. We are famous for not turning down additional dollars. Hey, you join our Patreon, helps the show. You can also, if you don't want to do the Patreon thing, PayPal, you can do Venmo at Tubs at the Club. If you want to do PayPal, we can do that too. So that's the way to support the show. The benefit of supporting the show too is our #OnlyTubs Discord, which, hey, it's picking up as the season goes. Game day, there is nowhere online remotely close that gets the traffic traction that our Discord gets. And it's essentially everything good you could hope to get out of the internet without the garbage. So we have a kick-ass community. They help us in the show. It also lets you meet some people that you go to a football game. You're gonna have some more people you can spend time talking football with outside the parking lot before you go in. So patreon.com/Tubs the Club. It's also where we post our #JustTheTips. We get inside information. It goes to the Discord, which is like, hey, we talked about last week. If you are a Discord member, you knew Romana Kraskova is going to be the volleyball coach for about 3 months. If you're in the Discord, you've got inside observations on what we've seen out of Mike Martinez, tight end transfer from UCLA, 6'7" dude hey, I'm not going to say anything more. We've talked about in the Discord. So support the show, patreon.com/Tubs the Club. You're on mute, dude.
I made it through the whole damn show until the very end. Just amateur hour all over the place here, boys. Next week, we are back with our Idaho-centric preview. We're going to be breaking down the Vandals. You're not going to want to miss this one. With that said, gentlemen, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.